Carolina need to
I
be
think
there?
I'll call this session back to order.
We need Carolina.
Oh, here she is.
She's coming.
She's here.
Oh,
There she is, okay. Yeah, just, we'll call everything back to order then, following the recess. Got the tape going. All right, call this hearing back to order. Ms. Hanson, would you like to call another witness?
The city calls for Rebecca Schrupp.
You swear in.
Yeah, all right, so please raise your right hand and state your name.
Rebecca Schrupp.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be true?
I do.
Okay, proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Schrupp, what is your position of employment?
I'm the city manager here in Morris.
And how long have you served in that capacity?
Yeah, a little over 2 years.
And prior to your tenure here at the city of Morris, what is your public sector experience?
Yeah, so I have my bachelor's in accounting, my master's in business administration. I started my public administration in Clarkfield. I worked there for 2.5 years, went to Canby for 6.5 years, and I've been here ever since.
And as city manager here at the city of Morris, what are your main duties and responsibilities? Just big picture.
Yeah, so I'm the administrative head of the city, do day-to-day operations, manage staff.
Do you have any role relative to disciplinary action of staff?
Yep, so I can do discipline for anyone, including termination for anyone that isn't a department head, and up to termination for anyone who is a department head.
Up to termination.
Up to termination for a
Okay,
department head.
And who holds the authority to terminate department heads?
The city council does.
So we are here regarding a challenge to the 20-day suspension of Ms. Barber. Were you the decision maker in that disciplinary action?
I was.
And within the notebook in front of you, there's a tab A, which is a notice of intent to levy disciplinary action with the Loudermill notice, correct?
Correct.
And with that Loudermill notice, is that an opportunity for, or was that an opportunity for Ms. Barber to present information regarding why she believed disciplinary action should not be taken?
Yes.
And then turn to Exhibit B, as in boy. Is this the 20-day unpaid disciplinary suspension that was issued to Ms. Barber on April 3?
It is.
And was this issued pursuant to the city's non-union employee policy?
Yes.
And is that attached as Exhibit E1, one of the exhibits in the investigation?
Yes.
Now, with reference to this issue, the facts of this case, as we've heard, relate to issues associated with misuse of public funds. How did you first learn of these issues? Can you explain that to us, please?
Yeah, so in February of this year, city members, so it was myself, our finance director Whitney Millard, Ann Barber, Councilmember Brian Solvey, Councilmember Kim Gullickson, who also sits on the library board, the library chair, Melanie Full, and then a couple from the county and Viking Library System. We all kind of sat down to have a discussion on kind of what each of our roles were. We were having a negative balance in our operating budget the last few years, so kind of trying to have some group discussion on what could be done about that and moving forward. Before that meeting, Whitney, Brian, Kim, and I sat down to discuss a few things. In that meeting, we found out that the library board does not approve invoices. They just approve the financial statements, so all the invoices that should be approved prior to purchases were not being done. So after the meeting with all of those entities, Whitney and I had asked to sit down with Melanie and Ann to have some discussion on a couple other things relating with the library, one of them being the invoices and how they were approved. At that time, Ann had asked to wait on a meeting and have an agenda prior to having the discussion. So I went back and sent an email to Whitney, Brian, Kim, Melanie, and Ann to kind of bullet point out what I'd like to talk about.
And I'm gonna interrupt you right there. Turn to Exhibit H, as in Henry. And it's an email thread, so we need to go to the back of the thread and read up, right? So the first email in this thread is on page 2, and the pages are numbered on the bottom. And I see a February 25 email from you to the individuals that you've noted, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And then in this email, you indicated that we talked about meeting with Ann and Melanie, but Ann wanted to get some information together prior to the meeting. Things I think we should talk about are, and then you have a bullet pointed list, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then within this bullet pointed list, do you reference invoice approval process?
I do.
Second to last bullet, is that correct, on page 2?
Yes.
Okay, and what did you state there?
I said, what is the invoice approval process? There are concerns on things not being approved before spending. Before involving the auditors, I think we need to talk about this process. To me, there are a lot of red flags with it.
Okay, and then what did Ms. Barber respond? Did she ask about that bullet point?
She did. She asked me to expand on the bullet point and what that meant.
Did she indicate or ask that you share some specific examples of what you consider to be red flags?
She did.
Okay, and did you respond to that email?
I did.
Okay, and to what was your response?
Yeah, so I told her city expenses are supposed to be approved before paid. From what I'm understanding of the process, you bring a month-end financial report to the board. They are not approving expenses prior to them being expended. In talking with a former finance director that also worked with the library board, their auditors would flag things like this if they were not approved by the board prior to being spent. Almost all of our checks from the city are not sent out until the council approves a list of bills.
Did you say we would like to get more clarification on how the invoices are approved to be paid, when they get approved, and when checks go out?
Yes.
Okay, and did you get a response back from Ms. Barber?
No.
What did you do next?
So then I went and talked to Whitney.
Who's Whitney?
Whitney is our finance director.
Thank you.
Yeah, to have a conversation about if she felt that Ann was questioning more so of all the things on there. Ann was really questioning what the red flags were with the expenses. We had known that there were a lot of items that were sent to her house, and the email that had went out in 23.
And that's the email that's noted under Exhibit G, correct, from Maggie Bussey, then accountant to Ann Barber, from October of 2023, where Ms. Barber was told we should definitely have all items shipped to the library.
Yes.
That are purchased with the library card, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So we pulled just a few invoices and noticed some concerning charges such as the Audible, the AMC Plus, and then Amazon Prime Rentals. So we felt that there was some more fact finding that we needed to do.
Did you then discuss that with the library chair?
The next day, we pulled in Melanie Full, the library chair, to have some discussion on possible fraud and that we had suspected some fraud concerning some of these charges, the Audible charges, the AMC Plus, seeing if they had these services at the library. We were told they didn't. Not to her recollection that they had these at the library, and that they had stopped approving invoices because they were sending too many emails back and forth and didn't want to violate any open meeting laws, so they just decided to do financial statements.
did you then contact Ms. Barber and request the username and password associated with the library Amazon account?
Yeah, I believe that was the next morning. I called Ann to ask her for the username and password for the Amazon account. She wasn't at work yet. She didn't start till 10 o'clock, and she said she would call me when she got there.
Did she do that?
She did. She said that she had her Amazon username and her Amazon account up, and that we could come over and take a look at it. To which I again asked her for the Amazon username and password, and she said that she did not feel comfortable giving it to me until she heard from her attorney. I asked her if it was a personal Amazon account, to which she stated it was not, but that she had some personal cards on there. I told her that she could delete the cards and then give us the username and password, and she still said she did not feel comfortable giving it until she heard from her attorney or our attorney.
And again, this is the library Amazon account,
Yeah,
correct?
that is correct.
Did that response surprise you?
It did. Usernames and passwords are part of city property. They are the city property. So being the city manager, I should be able to have those accesses. And so her being so defensive on not giving it until she heard from council was a little suspicious.
Her attorney.
Yeah.
And was Ms. Barber placed on paid administrative leave shortly thereafter?
She was.
Okay, and why did you do that?
I put her on leave due to the internal investigation. She didn't want to hand over information, and I wanted to make sure we had kept the integrity of the investigation.
Were you concerned about Ms. Gelberg Nelson testified about the ability of witnesses to interfere with or tamper with evidence, I think was her phrasing. Did you share any of those concerns about potential tampering with evidence?
I did.
And what led you to have that concern?
Just her not being willing to give up that information and hand it over so we could take a look into what was going on.
Did the city then utilize an outside independent investigator to conduct the investigation?
We did.
Why?
We did that to make sure that we had an unbiased, independent person who did not have any connection with the city or city staff, to make it so if someone said we were being biased on it, that we weren't. We had an independent eyes looking into this.
And once you received the investigation report and the exhibits, did you believe the investigation was fair?
I did.
Did you believe that Ms. Gelberg Nelson was thorough?
I did.
And as you reviewed the evidence and Ms. Gelberg Nelson's findings, did you concur with her presentation of the findings?
I did.
Did you believe additional investigatory work was needed?
No.
And then did you concur with human resources as well as finance within the city relative to potential disciplinary action?
I did. I work with Maggie and HR on any personnel matters. Maggie Busty. And then I work with Whitney Millard, who's our finance director. I brought her in on this because it was a case of fraud and misuse of public funds. With that, we needed to connect with law enforcement and by state statute, connect with law enforcement and the state auditor's office and our own auditing firm. And she is part of all of that.
And so when you say by state statute, we needed to connect with law enforcement, the state auditor, and our own auditor. Explain that.
Yeah, so we are required if we suspect fraud or have a case of fraud or misuse of public funds, that we are required to report that to the state auditor's office and to law enforcement.
And what is the status of that?
Our investigation, our police investigation is still pending, and we have given the information, and the sheriff's office has also given more information to the state auditor's office, and we have not heard back from them on kind of their status.
And so in your consultation with Human Resources, Maggie Bussey, and Finance, Whitney Millard, did the three of you consult relative to this matter then?
Yes.
And then, again, going back to Employer Exhibit A, the notice of intent to levy disciplinary action. This was the notice that was issued to Ms. Barber on or about March 24, 2025, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and did you initially recommend the termination of Ms. Barber's employment to the city council?
I did.
And is under the city non-union policy, is that your role relative to the department heads, your role is recommendation, and then the city council can act on that recommendation relative to discharge?
That is correct.
And why in this case did you recommend termination?
I recommended termination because an outside independent investigator stated that there was misuse of funds. She had found that there was inappropriate use of our tax exempt status. Being in public service, we need to make sure that we keep that sacred trust with the public, and misusing these funds were an egregious use of that trust, and we felt that termination was the best route, the only route.
And as you've reviewed other situations involving public employees and public employers, are you familiar with other cases in which public employers have terminated or issued lengthy suspensions to public employees for misuse of public funds?
Yes, yes. Do you want me to go into them? Because I can. So a few of them that we can note is that Fairview Range Regional Health Services, they terminated a cook who took food without proper purchasing procedures followed. Seemed like it was, from what I was reading, a one-time event. Went to arbitration, the termination stood, because even though it was a one-time event and for a small amount, stealing from the public, theft of public items is egregious and is not tolerated. Carver County also had a gentleman, a deputy, serve 168-hour suspension.
Correctional deputy, correct?
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
correctional deputy. So 21 days he served unpaid leave for also taking food. Common practice, no policy, but the arbitrator upheld that also because theft in the workplace makes a corrosive workplace. So that one was also upheld. As stated prior, Traverse County terminated employee for using the postal machine with 48-cent stamp. The arbitrator took it down to a lengthy suspension of 12 months, 12 months of unpaid leave, and stated that even a de minimis amount of 48 cents breaks that sacred trust that the public has with the employees that are there. So just because it's a small amount doesn't mean that it shouldn't have happened. And the last one, St. Paul Public Schools, they terminated a clerk for misplacing or taking. Couldn't find it. Someone handed her a little over $2,000, was not accounted for. Prior bad behaviors and issues prior to that were taken into account by the arbitrator that said bad decision after bad decision, it's not a mistake.
Now, in the city of Morris, have you in fact also terminated an employee for engaging in improper conduct associated with public funds?
I have.
Turn to Exhibit I. Did you terminate an employee by the name of Kevin Pugh?
I did.
And was Kevin Pugh a liquor store employee?
Yes, he was the assistant liquor store manager.
And what were the facts that led to his termination?
Yeah, he was getting items at cost instead of retail. He was manually going in the system and changing the price on the items and taking them at cost versus retail.
So if a bottle of wine is retailing at $10, was he going into the system and showing purchasing it for the wholesale amount of $5.
Yes.
And then
somebody-
and then purchasing it for $5, not $10.
Correct.
Okay. And in the liquor store, was there a policy that said employees couldn't do that?
No,
Does the city have a policy that says you can't open up the till of a liquor store and take $5 out on top of it?
no.
Why not?
Because it's common sense. If you were to ask any employee in the city if they can utilize city funds or take money from petty cash drawers or utilize our gas cards or go and go buy our items at tax exempt at Town and Country, they all would say no. If you ask anyone throughout the state, a city employee in any other city in the state, they would all say you cannot use city funds in this way.
And were these some of the factors that led you to recommend discharge?
Yes,
And now, did the council uphold your recommendation?
they did not.
And what was your understanding, and again, I'm asking you your understanding of the reasons?
Yeah, they had felt that Anne could be remediated and could learn from this situation.
Was it your understanding that council supported some level of disciplinary action?
Yes,
And then subsequent to that meeting, is that when you issued the notice of suspension to Ms. Barber?
yes,
And it's a 20-day suspension, correct?
correct,
And that's in tab B as in boy, correct?
yes.
And in this notice, you indicate your conduct is serious from the standpoint of the city. Employees are expected to be accurate, truthful, and transparent. Employees are expected to be able to account for the expenditure of public funds. The use of public funds is intended to be limited to a public purpose, and employees are prohibited from using public funds for personal gain. As you wrote that to Ms. Barber, why did you feel like it was important to stress that?
Because our job with public funds we have to be accurate, truthful, and transparent. We have to account for things and use the public funds appropriately. And it felt that it was serious enough that that we needed to stress how important it is moving forward that these ethics and standards are kept.
When Ms. Barber returned following her suspension, did you have a conversation with her?
Yes.
And what information did you learn from Ms. Barber about the location of these items?
Well, I didn't hear anything in that meeting. We heard in the closed session that there were 18 items that were found at her home.
And who did you learn that from?
From her attorney, Justin Anderson.
And did you evaluate that statement in conjunction with, or could you reconcile that information with what she told Ms. Gelberg Nelson?
Yeah, so to me, I felt she wasn't being truthful by stating that she didn't have any items at home, we wouldn't find anything there, and then there was 18 items found at her home.
So she told Ms. Gelberg Nelson there were no items there, you wouldn't find any items there, and then she told the council there were 18 items found, correct?
Yes.
In preparation for this hearing, did you review Ms. Barber's exhibits, including a document showing cataloged items from Viking Library System?
Yes.
And I don't know if you have this in front of you, ma'am, so if I can approach the witness, I'll hand this to you. This is Exhibit J, and I believe it's in the record. Is this the exhibit that was submitted on behalf of Ms. Barber?
Yes.
And what is your understanding of this listing?
We were under the standing right away that all these books were now back at the library.
And so subsequent to that, did you contact the IT coordinator for Viking Library System and ask when these items were added to the catalog?
I did.
Did you also determine whether or not these items were, the vast majority, checked out?
That they were in there?
That these items that were added to the catalog, that the vast majority of them were checked out?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, we have a rebuttal exhibit that I've labeled Exhibit L that includes the data that Ms. Schrupp has obtained from the IT, the IT coordinator from Viking Library Systems that I'd like to introduce into the record, that shows the date that the items were added into the catalog, as well as the due date of the items that were checked out.
Is there an objection?
Is there any objection to that, council?
I haven't seen that. No objection.
May
Yeah.
I approach?
Yes.
All right, so it can be received.
Pardon?
Received.
We'll
You
allow
can just
it.
say it's received.
Yeah, it's received.
So I'm handing you what's been marked Exhibit L.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Schrupp, I'd like you to walk through this document and explain this to us.
Yeah, so the title is all of the items that were in the unknowns, the call number, that is what is on their sheet.
When you say their sheets,
Oh, I'm
are you
sorry.
referring to Exhibit J?
Exhibit J, yes.
So Ms. Barber's Exhibit J.
Yep. The purchase date is the date that we had from invoices on when these unknowns were purchased.
So the purchase date corresponds to the information from Ms. Gilbert Nelson's investigation report, is that correct?
That's correct. The ones that are left blank are ones that were not in the report.
So, for example, the first one that's blank, I think, is
Fire Punch Volume 1.
Fire Punch Volume 1. I have a line, so that's left blank, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, and then what is item barcode?
That came from the Viking Library IT gentleman, so I'm not quite positive on what that is.
And then the creation date, what is that?
The creation date is when it was put into the cataloging system.
When it was put into the catalog system, so the date it was cataloged,
Right.
correct? Okay. And then, as we look at the date that it was cataloged, was Ms. Barber interviewed on March 7, 2025?
Yes, I believe that was the date.
And if you look at Exhibit E, page 1, it states the investigative interview of Ann Barber was conducted in person at the North City Hall on March 7, 2025. Do you see that?
Yep.
Okay. And then if you turn to the suspension notice, Exhibit B as in boy, was the suspension served from March 31, 2025 through April 25, 2025?
Yes,
And did Ms. Barber return to work on Monday, April 28th?
yes.
Okay. And so as we look down this creation date, what do we note?
The majority of them were put into the system after Ms. Barber returned to work.
On April 28th, 2025?
Correct.
Do we see a number that were actually added to the catalog in June 17th?
There's a number of them that were added on June 17th.
Okay. And then we see a number of them in May, correct?
Correct.
And April, correct?
Correct.
And then what is the due date? What does that show us?
So all but 3 that we found were all checked out. So the due date is when they're due back to the library.
And as we look at these due dates, do we see a handful of common due dates, right?
Correct.
We see a number of due dates on June 25, right?
Right.
Do we see a July 9 due date?
Yes.
And we see a July 12 due date?
Yes.
And I don't see any other due dates than those 3, do you?
I don't.
So all of these items have 3 common due dates, correct?
Correct.
So as you look at this information, looking at Barber's Exhibit J, coupled with the fact that now all of these items have been cataloged, the vast majority of them cataloged after she returned to work, and now they all have one of 3 due dates and are checked out, what conclusions do you draw?
It's a little suspicious.
And what's a little suspicious about that?
It's suspicious that all of the items that hadn't been in the system for 2 to 3 years are all of a sudden checked out. Some of them within 4 days after they were put in.
Is it suspicious that they were almost all cataloged after Ms. Barber returned to work?
Yes,
What's suspicious about that?
because if they were in the library prior and during her interview with the investigator, someone who worked in the library could have been putting them in prior to her coming back to work.
One of the statements that was made in the petitioner's opening remarks included the fact that there's not a policy, words to that effect, right? And again, I'm not quoting, I'm paraphrasing, but a statement along the lines of what policy was violated, right? And you talked earlier about the fact that any city employee would know certain things regarding public funds. As you looked at this situation and decided to issue the 20-day suspension, did you analyze whether or not Ms. Barber was on notice of the city's expectation that she should not use the city credit card for personal purchases and she should not use the library's tax-exempt status for her personal items?
Yes.
And what conclusions, if any, did you draw regarding whether or not she was on notice of those expectations?
Yeah, so it's basic common sense that you can't use public funds for not a public purpose. So using public funds for iPods, iPhone chargers, tips, which we do have a policy on,
Hair dye?
hair dye, and then using our tax exempt status, which sales tax does come back to our city in the form of LGA. So taking away sales tax for things like cat toys, microwaves, household products like kettles and sheets and different things like that.
A bird feeder,
A bird feeder,
nightlights,
yes.
jewelry,
So
makeup?
Those are
review?
all things that, we should not be using public funds. And it is breaking trust of the public to use these funds. And it's common sense that you do not use public funds for a non-public purpose.
And with reference to the October 2, 2023 email, we've had some discussion of that. That's included as Exhibit F, or excuse me, I misspoke. That's included as Exhibit G. That Maggie Bussey wrote to Ms. Barber. That was described as a casual email. If you received an email from an accountant stating we should definitely not have all items shipped to the library that are purchased, or I'm sorry, we should definitely have all items shipped to the library that are purchased with the library card, does that seem like a casual statement to you as a reader?
No.
How do you understand that notice?
It was a directive to stop sending items to her home.
And did she comply with that directive?
No.
Now, the evidence in the record is that she violated that directive on 8 occasions. So, Ms. Schrupp, it was just 8 occasions that this directive was violated. I would expect counsel to ask you that question. I'll give you the opportunity to respond now. What's your response to, but it was just 8 times that she violated that directive?
1 time is a mistake, 2 times is on purpose. You're making a judgment on not doing it. I could see after getting this, since it seemed like such a habit, you would have maybe a 1-time mistake and then go, oh, I'm gonna take off my address. The next times, it's a choice.
Now, as you evaluated this issue and issued the disciplinary suspension, the 20-day disciplinary suspension, were you familiar with Ms. Barber's employment record here at the city?
Yes,
Were you familiar with the fact that she had tenure here at the city and did not have prior disciplinary action?
I did.
Did you consider that?
I did.
Okay. Were you also familiar with the fact that she had received a communication award from the university and
Yeah.
that she's well liked
Yes.
as a library director?
Yes.
And what was your assessment of those facts? Tell me how you evaluated and took into consideration the fact that she does have, prior to this point, a positive employment record, that she has received communication awards, that she is well liked in the community. How did you assess that?
Yeah, so as a library director, Ms. Barber has 2 different things to look at. She has the communications and public relations piece, which she is very good at. And then you have the needing to be fiscally responsible and manage your budget and manage your funds in a public manner. And her being well liked in the community and doing very well at the public relations does not trump that there was misuse of public funds.
Did you evaluate, as you made this disciplinary decision, did you evaluate and consider the concept of equitable treatment or disparate treatment and whether or not Ms. Barber was being treated differently than other employees?
Yes.
And what was your assessment of that disparate treatment or equitable treatment standard?
From the city manager perspective, she was not being any different than any other employee. As stated prior, there was another employee who was terminated for not the same thing, but misuse of government funds, just like we're seeing here.
And did you assess kind of the industry standard, if you will, for lack of a better phrase, regarding misuse of public funds in the public sector?
Yes.
And what conclusions did you draw? I know you talked about some cases earlier, but what conclusions did you draw then as you looked at this?
Yeah, and looking at all those different examples that we had talked about before, it didn't matter if it was a small amount or a large amount, from 48 cents up to millions of dollars of embezzlement. Theft was theft in any of those cases, and in most those cases, it was termination or a lengthy suspension.
So, Ms. Schreck, as you kind of think about this case, what is the significance of this from your perspective as the decision maker in issuing this case? What is the significance of this proceeding relative to these facts?
I think the significance is to really look at how we're going to uphold our public employees and what we are going to set their standards at. The standards for employees, public employees, are to spend money on things for a public purpose. And when that is not done, we have citizens losing trust in what we do. And if we are not held to a higher standard, it really will reflect poorly on us as employees of the city, as us as a city.
I have nothing further, thank you.
Cross-examination?
Cross-examination, Justin?
I was in trouble by not waiting for the judge to ask for that. So what is the max discipline that a city manager can levy to a department head without the consent of the city council?
Suspension or demotion.
Is there a time, or is there a length of the suspension, an hour limit?
Not that I'm aware of.
You would be aware if
Yeah.
there was one, because you're the city manager. Okay, I want to get the timeline up to Ms. Barber being placed on administrative leave. So, Exhibit H is the email exchange between yourself, Ms. Barber, and any number of individuals affiliated with the library, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so were there any discussions after these emails were sent?
There was with Ann or with anybody?
With Ann?
Just about the username and password.
So does the city of Morris, since we're talking about the emails, have a invoice approval process?
We, for the city's items or for the
Well, the library is
items?
part of the city, right?
From what I was understanding before we knew about the invoices there, it was always under the assumption that the library board approved those invoices prior to the expenditures, the checks going out.
Okay. So if Ann wanted to order a book, that would have to wait until the expense was approved by the library board and thereafter the city council.
Well, the city council doesn't approve her expenditures, the library does. The city council approves the library board minutes.
Okay. So there is no policy in place for the approval of invoices at the library?
No.
What has your, you've been the manager for 2 years, you're familiar with all of the departments, what caused this issue to come to your attention in February of 2025? Why didn't it come to your attention sooner?
There was, so things did come to my attention sooner. So in the email that Maggie sent out, it was brought to my attention by the administrative assistant who was scanning in invoices. They scan in invoices for our electronic system, and she had come to me stating that as she's scanning in items, she has seen many items going to Ann's home, and she had concerns about it and wanted to share with me share with me this. So, I took that and asked Maggie to send, Ann a message that stated, not to send anything to her home. So, if there was that came up, and then other items, why we were talking about the library and different things were that it had been operating negatively since I had started.
Has there been a different policy or protocol followed subsequent to the investigation?
We put into place a credit card policy, and we also, reviewed and, rearranged and our purchasing policy, so updated. Just, different ways on who needs to approve what when it comes to council. Using credit cards or using, the gas cards can't be allowed. Those are some of the main ones that were changed.
And are these policies unique to the library, or are they
They're
citywide?
citywide.
So, did I understand your testimony correct, that on February 27 of 25, it was discovered that there were lots of items being sent to Ann's?
No, the first time I had heard about it was in October of 23.
So this email went out, Ann responded, and 2 days later, she was placed on paid administrative leave, correct? Looking at Exhibit H. Those emails are from February 25th,
Yes.
2025.
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
So were there concerns about misconduct prior to you sending these emails?
There were concerns after we found out that the invoice process was very different than what we had thought it was. And then looking into invoices and finding the Audible, the AMC Plus, movie rentals, we did have some concerns.
Okay. Concerns that couldn't be addressed in simply visiting with Ann.
Well, in cases of fraud, that is why we went to the chair, the library board chair, Melanie,
And
to
she-
ask her if these are items that are used at the library.
You asked no other library employees?
No,
Didn't ask Ann?
no.
Are you aware that they show movies at the library?
Yes,
Possible that Amazon Prime Video is utilized for that?
we thought of that, and we, like Callie, had looked through the Facebook on the library's Facebook page to see if there were any of the movies that we had first saw as rentals were on there, and they were not.
So at what point did you conclude that investigation was needed?
When we found quite a few invoices that had charges that sparked concerns. Like I said, such as Audible, which you need a username and password, your Amazon username and password, the rentals, and other charges such as iPods, and different things. We figured it was time to connect with an independent investigator.
Okay, so when was it that you asked Ann for her password, username and password?
It was the morning of the 27th.
Did she provide it?
No.
How did you get into the Amazon account?
When we put her on leave, that is when she handed over her username and password.
So she did provide the username and password.
After she was put on leave.
And at what time of the day on the 27th was she put on leave?
I would say early afternoon, but I could be off on when. I believe it was sometime in the afternoon.
So, what's fraud?
It's fraud.
Yeah, you've testified that discipline was imposed because of fraud. And you cited any number of cases that you reviewed in coming to your decision, but I want you to define, if it's not defined in city policy, what is fraud?
Fraud is using funds in a way that is not appropriate.
Government doesn't always use money in the best ways. Would you agree with that? They try.
Objection, relevance.
Okay, it's up to you.
You have to say overruled or sustained. If you agree with the objection,
Are you
sustain.
saying you sustain the objection? I'd like to allow the question, then you'd overrule the question.
Overruled.
You may answer.
Can you repeat the question?
Governments aren't always the best at spending money. Would you agree with that statement?
We've seen Minnesota have a lot of fraud in it, so yes.
But not all expenditures are related to fraud, correct?
All of the misuse of the monies,
Okay, so let's,
or, is that what you're saying? And if they are misusing money, it's not always fraud?
that's the question.
I think if people are misusing money, it's fraud.
So if the materials that were missing were in fact purchased, found in the catalog, is that fraud or a misuse of government funds?
I think there is question as to where were the items. If it didn't come to the attention, would the items have been back?
Does there have to be an element of personal gain for funds to be utilized for purposes of fraud or misuse?
Maybe to some extent. You could say maybe.
Do you view this situation any different than that concerning Mr. Pugh?
No.
And why not?
Because I think in both cases, there was misuse on both ends.
But Mr. Pugh took money from the city, correct?
Correct.
If the materials are accounted for, would you agree that Ms. Barber hasn't taken anything?
But it's not only the materials that we're talking about, it's utilizing our credit card for things like hair dye and iPods and chargers and snacks and restaurant tips and other things. It's not just the books, it's other items that also have a dollar value to them also.
So if you turn to page 14 of Exhibit E. At the top of page 14, investigation, findings, and basis for the same.
Yes.
Where in, this is what you relied upon, Ms. Gilbert Nelson's conclusions in reaching your conclusion to discipline.
Yes.
Where in her findings does she indicate that the purchase of hair dye, iPods, things of that nature was for her benefit?
It does not say that there.
You were present when Ms. Gilbert Nelson testified, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Barber had no idea what the purpose of the investigation or what the allegations were.
Yes.
And she claimed that she didn't think there would be any of the items counted.
Correct.
But there were. Correct?
Correct.
She was truthful about that.
She didn't share that with us. She shared that with you.
Well, under a time frame in which you were considering the termination of her employment, council may have very well suggested to you that you not have any communication with her.
I believe Callie had also stated in her investigative report to Ann that if she thought of anything else, that Ann could contact her with any other relevant information.
What is the date of Ms. Gilbert's report?
March 19th.
And do you know when it was shared with me?
I don't recollect that.
And when was the Loudermill hearing?
That was March 28th.
And do you recall the investigative report being shared in pieces with myself?
I think the first email that went out, you got some of it, and then a second one went out and had the whole report.
So Exhibit L. Do you have that in front of you, Cheryl?
Yes.
So the creation date is the date that invaded this catalog, is that your understanding?
Yes.
And that's subject to manipulation? Do you or do you not know that?
I do not know that. At the IT gentleman at Viking Library System said he cannot give me a purchase date. He can only give the date that it was put into the cataloging system.
So my concern is, do you see the entry for Broken Flowers DVD recording, video recording?
Yes,
So that has a purchase date, and let me know if you agree with me, of February 6th of '23.
yes,
And then it has a creation date of March 2nd of 2006.
correct.
So how is it possible to catalog an item 17 years prior to its purchase?
If I had to speculate, I'd say that it was another purchase of a DVD on that date. And a first one was gotten on March 2nd of 2006.
And all of the missing items were sent to Ann's home, correct?
Yes,
And she has steadfastly maintained that she believed them to be in the library.
yes,
Are you suggesting at all that they weren't in the library as she indicated? Except the 18 items found at her.
from the investigative report, it does not look like they were at the library.
Do you think Ms. Barber or Ms. Gilbert Nelson would be in a better position to locate those materials?
Most likely Miss Barber.
Did you ever ask Ann, why are there 3 identical due dates for all these materials?
We just received this information today, so no, I did not.
But you received the information that they had been cataloged.
Correct.
Just one little piece. Thank you, Ms. Sharp. I don't have additional questions.
Yes.
Ms. Hanson, would you care to redirect?
Thank you. In looking at Exhibit L, you were asked some questions, ma'am, about it's like the 5th line down, if I'm counting right, Broken Flowers, a DVD video recording, correct?
Yes,
And the purchase date, it's such small font, I'm sorry, I need better glasses, obviously. The purchase date is February 6, 2023, right?
correct.
And the creation date is March 2, 2006. Do you see that?
Yes,
Did the Viking IT person inform the city that if an item is cataloged twice, the system automatically pulls the prior date?
yes.
And so what conclusions, if any, do you reach regarding Broken Flowers?
That it was cataloged prior.
So
Or it's a
cataloged
second,
twice.
yeah, second.
And is this list created based off of petitioner's exhibit J, an exhibit that the city received through Ms. Barber's attorney sometime approximately last week, if I'm recalling correctly?
Correct.
And did you receive information regarding the creation date of that cataloging from Viking IT within the last 2 or 3 business days?
Yes,
And did you receive the due date information from Viking Library earlier today?
today.
Did you ask Viking Library IT Systems if you could get the person who checked out the book?
We did.
And what were you informed?
We were told that that is private data, and we could not obtain that.
You were asked a number of questions about whether or not there has to be a personal purpose for there to be a definition of fraud. Do you recall that line of questioning?
Yes,
You've also testified, ma'am, on direct examination relative to public purpose. Is it your understanding that there must be a public purpose for the expenditure of public funds?
Yes,
And so when we look at these items, specifically when we look at Exhibit 10, page 11, these are the items that Ms. Barber used the city credit card for, correct, and shipped them to her homes, right?
yes,
Is there a public purpose associated with hair color dye?
I would say no,
Does the library check out hair color dye to patrons?
no,
Is there a public purpose associated with Apple AirPods?
no,
Is there a public purpose associated with cute cat pens?
no,
With reference to the utilization of tax exempt status, must one qualify as a tax exempt organization to in fact utilize tax exempt status and not pay sales tax?
yes,
Does the fact that sales tax is improperly not paid negatively affect the city of Morris?
it possibly could.
And is there a personal gain associated with an individual not paying sales tax on items that are otherwise subject to sales tax and instead misusing the employer's sales tax exemption?
Mr.
There
Mayor,
is.
I'm going to object to the line of questioning that is significantly leading.
I can rephrase, thank you. I got carried away, I apologize. I'd like you to address the tax exempt status issue as it relates to personal gain versus public purpose.
Yeah, so the sales tax exemption that was received, Ms. Barber didn't pay the 6.875% of sales tax, so she did get a gain from not paying sales tax.
You were asked some questions, ma'am, regarding the chronology. Up until February of 2025, did you believe the library board was approving invoices in the same manner that the city council did?
Yes,
Why did you believe that?
because it was the practice that was always had to approve invoices. Every city I've worked for, they have to approve expenses off of invoices and not financial statements.
Is February 2025 when you learned that that wasn't happening at the library?
Correct.
And this email exchange in late February 25, you said that the library was operating negatively. I just want you to, you're not suggesting that there was a negative work environment with that statement?
No, the budget was operating at a deficit the last few years.
Okay, I just wanted you to clarify that, okay. And then you were asked questions regarding the fact that you spoke with the library board director and asked her about Audible and AMC Plus and Prime, but you did not ask Ann those same questions. Do you recall that line
Yes.
of questioning? What questions did you ask Ann that day or the next day?
The only question I asked her was for her username and password
And the username and password on what?
on her Amazon account.
Her Amazon account?
Well, the city's Amazon account.
And what about her, well, was there anything with reference to her response that made you be, that contributed to your suspicion?
Well, she would not give the Amazon username and password. She was very aggressive when asking for it. She threw out there that she was waiting for her attorney to get back to her on if she could give up the username and password.
And when she was placed on paid administrative leave, did that include a directive to provide that information?
It did.
In the suspension, you'd notice in Exhibit B, you talk about what was specifically substantiated by the employment investigation and that she misused the city's credit card, and then you go into detail there. As you review that second paragraph in the suspension notice, do you consider that conduct fraud?
I do.
Why?
Because she was using the charges inappropriately, in a manner they shouldn't have been.
I'm not sure you're thinking.
No, you're not.
Does Ms. Hanson have another witness?
Ms. Hanson, would you like to call another witness?
The city rests subject to rebuttal.
All right, so, would Mr. Anderson like to call any witnesses?
Mr. Anderson, would you like to call any additional witnesses?
Call Ann Barber.
Ask if the council has any questions for.
Well,
Just a second here, I was just making some notes.
I gotta back us up.
I didn't,
Did the council have any questions for the last witness?
yeah, before we switch gears, I suppose, that would be appropriate.
Not there?
I did not have any.
No.
So you have to swear in the witness.
Oh, yeah, swear in the witness.
Yep,
Sorry.
I was just waiting to figure all that out. All right, I'll have you, please raise your right hand and state your name.
Ann Barber?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be true?
Yes.
You may proceed.
Ms. Barber, how are you employed?
I'm employed by the city of Morris,
In what position?
the library director of the Morris Public Library,
How long have you held that position?
since 2016.
And what are your duties as the librarian?
I oversee all the staff I hire, I train and can terminate. I oversee all the purchasing made for the library, whether it be books or items for wrapping books and barcoding them, and toilet paper and craft supplies, furniture. That's, I don't, yeah, and so, and I am in charge of all the programming, performances. I'm overseeing the budget and reporting to the library board.
Prior to the allegations that bring us here today, have you ever been disciplined?
No.
Okay. What does the library mean to you?
The library is, to me, is a community place for everyone, no matter who you are. We try to welcome everyone and assist them in anything that they need as far as access. So to knowledge, to entertainment, to each other, to creating a community hub. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Are you familiar with the policies that are enforced with the city of Morris?
Not until recently, really. I think there may have been one that I was privy to
Okay.
beforehand.
Who's your supervisor?
My supervisor is the city manager.
Does Ms. Bussey have any information or supervisory role over you?
No.
So I'd like you to turn the book before you to Exhibit G.
Maggie Uzi checking in with me because she noticed that there were some items that had my address on the credit card statement for the library, and she was checking to see that, you know, she was noticing they were being sent to my home.
Okay. And it's a true and accurate exchange between you and Ms. Boosie?
Yes.
And what was your takeaway from this particular email exchange?
I did take it as kind of casual, but I also heard what she was saying, and that I didn't wanna, raise any issues with any audit. So I agreed to stop doing it, and I do know that I did it 8 more times, and that was, me sort of acting in a quick manner for what I needed to do for my job.
And all of these materials that were sent to your house were ordered off of Amazon.
Correct.
So when you came to the city, or when you became the librarian, did the library have an Amazon account?
No.
How did the library get an Amazon account?
I felt we needed one, so I consulted the city manager at the time, and he said, yeah, go ahead and get a credit card, use it for the library.
So was it a new account that you created, or was it an existing account that you had?
My memory is that it was an existing account I had, because I've had an Amazon account of my own for many, many years, associated with different emails, different credit cards, and so I added that credit card to that account, and that's what I did.
So the account was being utilized for multiple purposes.
Right.
Did the manager know that at the time?
I don't know for sure. You know, I didn't keep that information from him, but yeah, I don't know if he did know that.
You understand now that that's not the way that things should be done.
Right.
With respect to, does the library get audited independently of the city?
No.
Are you provided audits that the city has conducted?
I have not been.
Okay. Are you aware of any audit findings with respect to you shipping materials to your home?
No.
So in the email, in evidence as Exhibit G, you indicate that you ship items to your house so that you can preview the items.
Correct.
So what is preview?
It is so that everything that I'm putting in the library, I'm aware of what it is, and that I think that it's a good fit for our library.
Not required of your position?
I think it's not written in my position necessarily, if I had my, but I mean, I am in charge of all the acquisitions, and I see it as my job to make sure that I'm making good choices for our particular library.
So it's something you feel is required?
I do.
Was there any follow-up to the email in person, by telephone, from the accountant after this exchange?
No.
So when you became the librarian, how were bills paid at the library?
So the previous director would receive the bills, code them, record the amount of, that was purchased from a particular company, and then make a spreadsheet of that, that would go to the library board to look at, as well as, and then the invoices would go to City Hall to be paid.
And at some point, did that change?
It changed fairly recently. It changed in 2024, if I'm remembering correctly. The library board was aware that I also receive a packet each month that describes all the purchases that are made by the library in an itemized list. And so the library board started looking at the end result of that to ask questions and approve.
And is there a different protocol now in place?
Yes.
Explain that.
Currently, I receive the bills, I code them, I save them until, like a day or two before the library board meets. And then, I scan all of them and give all of them to the library board chair. And then we meet before the library board meets with a committee that's formed from the library board, that's like a finance committee. And so then they look at all the invoices, and if they have any questions or anything, they ask me. And then Melanie submits them, I'm sorry, the board chair submits them to the city, and then they're approved by the city council, and then they are paid.
So Exhibit H in your book? Do you recognize this to be an email exchange with Ms. Schrupp?
Yes.
And you had a question about the invoice approval process.
I just said, well, what I had a question about was that she asked what the invoice approval process is. And she expanded on that by just saying, before involving auditors, I think we need to talk about this process. To me, there are a lot of red flags. So that concerned me, so I asked her to share what she's considering to be red flags. And then there was Becca explaining that in her mind, the city expenses are supposed to be approved before paid, and so that she was concerned that that was not what was happening.
Were there any precursor meetings before this email was sent that you?
There was a meeting, either that day or the day before that Ms. Schrupp talked about with a couple people from the Viking Libraries, the director of the library, Viking Library System, and County Commissioner, and Rebecca Young, me, and I can't remember who all was there exactly right now, but just to ask questions about the role that Viking plays in the Morris Public Library.
So what happened after you received this email?
Well, it was, so at the end, I will just want to back up and say at the end of that meeting, Becca started asking me several questions about staffing and hours, and those questions that are listed in this email that she sent me. I started writing down the questions, and I just said, it would be better if you could send me a list of these questions so I can, have time to look into them and answer them accurately. So then I got this email, and, from there, I was expecting that we would be having a meeting. based on what this was about.
But that meeting didn't occur.
That meeting didn't occur, no.
Leading up to the time that you were placed on administrative leave, did you identify some things in terms of bills that you were concerned about?
Yeah, I had noticed the Audible account, or account charge, because it was not, there wasn't a title or anything with it. And I was like, I think I need to follow up on this, so I called the credit card company and I said, you know, I didn't make this charge. They said, we'll take it off. We'll put it to our fraud department and then we'll investigate it and determine whether or not, you know, it should remain on the credit card or not.
And what do you understand Audible to be?
Audible is a Amazon service for listening to books.
Did you subscribe to Audible?
No,
Do you know how Audible came to be charged as many times as it did to the city credit card?
I don't know.
Do you have a personal Audible account?
I do not.
So there was testimony earlier indicating that after you reported the fraud on February 27th, there was a credit card charge from your card to Audible.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
During the course of this investigation, have you been presented any information regarding that charge?
No.
There was discussion that you refused to provide the username and password to Ms. Schrupp.
That is not true.
Okay.
I was at home, sometimes I work later into the evening, the library's open till 7, so sometimes I go in later in the morning. Ms. Schrupp called me and asked me for my computer password to get into my computer, and then also my Amazon password. And I said, I'm not at work right now, but also, what is this regarding? And she just repeated, I need these things. And I said, well, I'm going to the library in about an hour. Is that okay if I give it to you then? And I honestly don't remember how that conversation ended, but she was not happy about that. So we hung up, and then I called my board chair and I said, Becca just called me for all these passwords. I told her I would be in the library in an hour and I could give them to her when I got there because I don't have them memorized. But now I'm kind of thinking maybe I should go now. And my board chair said, yeah, you should go now and I will go too. So we both went to the library. I called City Hall and I eventually talked to Becca. She said she was gonna walk over to the library, and I think it was 2 hours later. I mean, she didn't say she was coming later, but it was like 2 hours later that she finally came to the library. I had, you know, all the passwords written out, ready to go. I brought her and Maggie into my office and kind of expected that they were gonna wanna look at things on my computer in that moment because I didn't know what was going on. And I was handed the, you're being put on leave, and we want your passwords. And I had my passwords ready to go, gave them to her, and then I left the building.
So did she request that, was that your first personal contact with her during the day?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, other than the phone call. to
Yeah,
my house.
and she delivered you the unpaid leave letter.
Right,
No discussion prior to that.
no,
Did you mention attorney that you needed?
no,
because it
I
was
don't
your-
have I didn't have an attorney.
Did you ever utilize the services of the attorney before this
No.
circumstance?
No,
So she gave you the letter and you gave her the passwords.
correct. And I didn't give her the passwords because she gave me the letter. I gave her the passwords because she asked for the passwords.
So you get the administrative leave letter and it references misconduct. What entered your mind?
The Audible account, and also Maggie had reached out and said that there were some magazine subscriptions on a credit card statement that I hadn't provided invoices for. Well, some of the magazines that are associated with the library credit card, I won't necessarily see the invoice. I've asked Maggie to purchase those before. No, that doesn't make sense, but I just didn't know where they were. So I just called, or I didn't call. Yeah, I did call, or emailed and asked for those invoices from the credit card companies, and they sent them, so that was no big deal. But at the time, I thought maybe that's also what's going on here. I don't know what's going on.
Did you have any other information prior to interviewing with Ms. Gilbert Nelson?
Did I, you ask that?
Did you have any any additional
Oh.
information?
No.
And you listened to Ms. Gilbert Nelson testify as to why that was.
Right.
So what happened when you entered the interview with Ms. Gilbert Nelson?
She just came in and she had a big, folder of paper, and I didn't know what that was, and I was just asked to interview, and she was going to record the interview.
And we talked about shipping items to your home.
Mm-hmm.
And you did ship 8 items to your home
Yes,
after the email.
after the email, yep.
And then, if you could turn to exhibit E10. Pages 8 and 9.
Okay.
So those are, that, do you recognize that?
Oh, wait, I might be on the wrong page. What did you say again?
E10, pages 8 and 9.
Well, I'm on E in 8 and 9. Are we here?
E, and then
Oh.
10.
I see.
Pages 8 and 9. So do you recognize this to be the list of 67 items that were shipped to your house, and at the time that Ms. Gilbert Nelson prepared her report were not able to be located?
That's what she told me. But I didn't see this list at that time.
So, in advance of the Loudermill hearing, did you look into this further?
Once I received the list, which took some time,
Why did it take time?
I think at one point it was sent to the wrong email. And I know there's been some address issues as well. So I received some mail from my neighbor across the street that came a day or 2 late because she didn't bring it over right away. So that may have factored into some of the delay.
So prior to the time of the Loudermill hearing, were you able to locate some of these materials in the catalog?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, because I could just do it on my phone.
Okay. And why were you able to locate them, but Ms. Gilbert Nelson was
Well,
not?
there's some spelling errors on the list. There was something, it's like a Leonardo DVD, I don't know if I can find it here or not, but it was just spelled wrong. And the way a library catalog works is, yes, you can definitely search by subject, you can definitely search by author, but if you're putting in any spelling that's not exactly correct, it will not find the item. It's not like Google. It just doesn't do the smart thing and fix it for you. So I'm often helping people, just even with just the spelling or the order of the words can throw people off. So I think that was part of why she didn't find it. Everything.
And you located materials at your house.
Yep, I did have some materials at my house that were being looked at by me.
And you told Ms. Gilbert Nelson that she wouldn't find any.
I've listened to that audio a couple times since it was recorded, and that's not exactly what I said. What I was saying was I don't have items at my house that I'm keeping for myself. I can check out, in the recording, I can check out things at the library. I don't need to keep them for myself. So I think that the answer was a little bit more complicated than what was actually extracted into the report. And again, I didn't have the list, so I didn't even know what items that were on the list that they were asking about.
Were you
So.
trying to mislead Ms. Gilbert Nelson?
No, no.
Did you have any concern or reservations about reporting to this body that you found 18 items at home?
No.
Because what was your purpose when you found that these items were missing?
What was my purpose of having them at my house?
Or, no, what was what did you try to do in response to,
I wanted to be able to locate the ones that I could locate without being able to go into the library, because on leave, I was asked to not be in the library. So all I could do was look at the library catalog and look at what I might have at my house under review. And so I was able to do those things. And then in my mind's eye, I could say, well, I'm pretty sure I know where these other things are. And I did share that information with the investigator when we met, that there's some in my office, there's some in storage, there may be some on shelving behind the cataloger, but, she didn't look.
So what suggestions did you make to the investigator in locating the missing materials?
I guess I just suggested the places to look.
Okay. So when did you come back to work following your suspension?
I don't know the exact date. Was it the beginning of April?
So Exhibit B indicates that you were expected to return April 28th.
Oh, it was the end of April, okay.
So did
Yep.
you report back to work?
I did.
And did you begin cataloging materials?
I did. I mean, I first looked for them,
Okay.
found most of them, and then gave them to Meredith and said, would you please catalog these? There's a few that I want to, kind of not put out in the library quite yet, because I'm still not sure that they're gonna work because of size. But please give them all to me when you're done cataloging them, so I can collect them and check them out. That's why they're checked out. They're checked out to me. I don't mind disclosing that. I didn't know in preparation for this meeting if I would want to bring the items here in a box, which is where they are, or if I would just do this, which is also so I did both. I scanned everything after it was cataloged and I put it all in one place.
So if we took a field trip to the library, would these items be?
They're in my office. Yeah, and, yeah, yep.
So, there was vicious speculation about, these due dates. Can you explain that for the council?
I think it's just that because as they were being cataloged, I was checking, at first, I didn't check them out, I just put them out on the shelves. And then I was like, maybe I should check them out because maybe I need to have them as a physical item to show people that I have them. So then I went, and grabbed the ones I could, and some were checked out by other people, and so I just waited and had until they were returned, and then I checked them out to myself. So some of them have been checked out a couple times, and some of them have only been checked out by me.
At present, of the 67 items, are there any still that have not been located?
There's a board book, which are these little books for tiny people that I haven't found yet, and it certainly might turn out. It's a lot of, when I was thinking about the carpeting project and how much upheaval that was, a lot of things got moved around, including items that needed to be cataloged. So they weren't hard for me to find. They were in that storage area that the investigator was brought into. But, that little book hasn't been located yet.
Okay, let's talk about some AirPods. The records indicate that there were Apple AirPods second generation purchased on March 14th of 22 for a price of $109.99. Was that purchased for library purposes?
It was purchased for the library.
Okay, explain how, why.
So there's twofold there. I can use them when I am in the library doing a Zoom meeting, but also when people are coming in and I'm helping them with their Libby or their Hoopla account. I actually don't allow patrons to put them in their ears since they've been in my ears. But I will show them how you can, Bluetooth to your phone. It's like an example of what you can do. We have ebooks and a number of other electronic examples for people to see that just haven't used stuff before, that don't get checked out by the public, but are there for us to teach. And so that was one aspect of those items, or that item.
Do they stay at the library?
Yes, and I do have a desk drawer, and it isn't obvious, I guess, because it's an old desk and it has like a standing desk thing on top of it. So the part that holds the keyboard kind of juts out, but the drawer is right here, so that is where they are housed.
Do other employees with the city of Morris have technology that they use to participate in Zoom meetings?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
And just turning your attention to page 11 of Exhibit 10. So it would just
the
be 2
green
pages
thing?
over.
Oh, okay.
Page 11 of Exhibit 10. Are you, the top line says, other city credit
Yes.
charges shipped to home.
Sure.
Okay, was hair dye
So that-
library expense?
Yes, it was. It was actually for a craft that we were doing with an artist, I don't know, a couple years ago.
How about cute cat head and gel?
Those were purchased for giveaway for kids in the summertime for our summer reading program.
You ever been instructed that you have to buy the absolute cheapest office supplies?
No. And oftentimes we're reimbursed by the Friends of the Library, and that might be true for some of these things as well, because things like, generally speaking, things like googly eyes and little pom-poms and construction paper, other kinds of art supplies. The Friends of the Library, like I will purchase them and then the Friends of the Library will reimburse the city for those purchases.
So there was a finding that you offered no credible explanation for shipping cordless phone batteries or pens to your home.
Yeah. I think in those cases, I don't know why they got shipped to my home. It was probably my mistake, but I certainly don't need cordless batteries for the library phones at my house. They came to my house, I brought them to the library, I installed them in the phones that we are using.
Do you have cordless phones at home?
No. Well, no, we do have one.
Okay.
Yeah, we have one. We do.
So prior to today, you reviewed everything on page 11.
Yeah.
Were any of these used or retained by you for your personal use?
No. And I'm sorry, but I was not aware that I was not supposed to put tip money on a lunch purchase if I was at a conference. I did not know that, and I apologize.
So, on the page opposite page 11, those are the Prime Video rentals.
Right.
Did you rent videos?
Yes.
Did you make each and every one of those charges?
I think I did, yes. I mean, yes, I did.
And why did you make those charges?
So some of them were shown at the library, and it was brought up earlier that they weren't all in our Facebook events. And that is true. Oftentimes with films for grown-ups, they're oftentimes something to do with a book club or some other special, a group that wants to watch something, and there's advertising in the library, but not always on Facebook for that. So, because we're not necessarily looking for a big crowd. We're looking for a specific reason why we're showing that library people might be interested in.
So any of these, were they viewed for your recreational pleasure?
No, I am very serious about making sure that anything that I'm going to either show or if I'm unfamiliar with it and it's a possible purchase, I will look at it in advance.
Okay. So explain to me why you viewed gas, food, lodging when the DVD was purchased already.
I think that I have no idea. I really don't know. It may have been that it was checked out from, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, Justin.
How about Muppet Christmas that was viewed on 12, or the invoice appears to be 12/23/22. I don't know when it was viewed, but
Right.
it was shown at the library on 12/20/2020.
And that was a winter film, and we sometimes have to change dates because of weather. And that one I remember because there's always a big discussion if we're going to not show something because it's dangerous for people to come out to the library.
So tell the council what SWANK is.
It's just a film licensing entity where if you are a public place, you have to pay a license in order to show a film. And so yeah, there's films that they list that, you know, this falls under the umbrella of the SWANK programming or SWANK license, but it's not saying that these films are going to be films that you're going to want to show to anybody. You know, I mean, it's just, these are the films that we have under our license.
Has the library board adopted Swank as the official list of pre-approved movies for the library?
No,
Have you adopted that?
no.
So where, just because it was addressed earlier, where is the embroiderer in relation to your?
Well, it's Dee's Needles, and she's just right over there. And, you know, the convenience of it is that if the shirts back when we were having them embroidered were sent to my place, I could just drop them off on my way to work. I mean, I didn't really think that there was anything wrong with doing that, so I didn't analyze it beyond that.
Do you have any streaming services that you utilize on a personal basis?
Yeah,
What are those?
Netflix and HBO or Max.
Do you know what Audible is?
Audible, yes, it is a audiobook service.
Do you know how the Audible charges were incurred on the city of Morris?
I do not know how that happened.
You know, the records indicate that there were charges of $15.98 that you sent in with the bills in October, November, and December of last year. Can you explain that?
Yeah. I think I was very busy and I rushed it and I made a mistake by doing that. I had at least once not gotten the credit card statement quick enough to City Hall and had incurred a charge and had gotten some feedback about that made me pretty nervous. And so I was trying to be fast and was trying to be accurate, but I did notice, yeah, there's a problem here, I need to investigate it.
Did you intentionally subscribe to Audible?
No,
After you returned to your employment, did you look up activity on the Audible account?
I did, yeah.
So what is Exhibit K, Ms. Barber?
It is the listening history for that Audible account in question.
Okay. And what items were listened to?
So it says the birds, the bees, and the elephant in the room, and pet cemetery.
And were they listened to on different days?
According to this, they were listened to on the same day,
And what day was that?
August 3rd of 2024.
Did you have a personal, so this is the library Audible account.
Right.
So were there any charges for the Audible account predating October of 2024?
Not that I know of.
And do you know, did you get a free subscription for any reason, or?
I don't recall that. The birds, the bees, and the elephant in the room is written by a local author. So I do have a memory of seeing that on Amazon and listening to what I thought was a sample of it. And I don't know what happened after that because I didn't listen to the whole thing, and it says that there's only 4 minutes left, so I don't know if it kept playing or what, but that's, and also, I do need to listen and review books, and so I think that it is strange that that happened. I don't know how it happened, but it does fall under the purview of my job.
Mr. Anderson, we're running up to the end of our battery life here. If we can maybe take a short break.
Can recess for 5. Okay, we'll just recess for 5 minutes. Reconvene at 7.
What are we gonna do at 7:15 when our council meeting comes?
I think it's easier if you keep going. I mean, you've got 2 attorneys here.
I don't have my slots.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's probably better if we finish this out and just push
I
the
don't think it's
council meeting
matter
back.
better if we specified our meeting time at 7:15.
Yeah, I know. But I think given the circumstances, we should just keep pushing. That's my recommendation, Brian.